Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing an Eldlich deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because this deck is the ultimate trap deck that's extremely fun to be able to play to lock down your opponent. I've included all sorts of spicy tech cards in this build for you guys, so without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Like getting your name description every single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting a request deck profile every single month to your Patreon. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're playing 3 copies of Eldlich the Golden Gucci Lord. This card is an amazing 3 of in the build. You can cut this card down to 2 in the build because it is a 41 card build, but I've always loved playing 3 copies of this card. It has the ability that you can actually send this card in a spell or trap from your hand to the graveyard to target a card on the field and send it to the graveyard. And if this card's in the graveyard, you can send a spell or trap card that you control to the graveyard to add this card to your hand. Then you can special summon a zombie monster from the hand, and if you do until the end of your opponent's turn, it gains 1,000 attack and defense points and cannot be destroyed by card effects, which you're always summoning this card off its own ability, bringing this card to a 3,500 attack point boss monster backed up by a bunch of trap cards, which is absolutely amazing. We then play 3 copies of Lord of the Heavenly Prison. Lord of the Heavenly Prison is really good as a 3 of in the build because this card actually protects your back row and also gives you a way to set the exact trap card that you need to your side of the field. This card is amazing as a 3 of in the build, plus it's also a level 10, which helps you go in for level 10 XZ plays with your copy of Eldlich the Golden Lord. We then play 3 copies of Kashtira Fenrir. Fenrir is really good as a 3 of in the build, just to special summon this card out to your side of the field. If you don't control the monster, add another copy of itself from your deck to your hand, and also spot remove cards off the field, which is just extremely powerful to be able to use in this deck to back up Fenrir with so many different trap cards. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get in to the spells. So for the spells, we're just going to be playing 3, and that's going to be 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. I've always felt like in trap decks, it's better to play Extravagance over Prosperity, because in this particular build, you don't want to reveal the cards to your opponent what you're actually drawing, so that you can have an element of surprise with the back row that you're setting to your side of the field so they can't play around it. Plus with this deck, you don't really need the extract, so this card is amazing at letting you draw 2 cards. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get in to the traps. So for the traps, we're going to start with 3 copies of Elixir of Scarlet Sanguine. This card is awesome as a 3 of in the build because this card actually lets you special summon a zombie monster from the deck or the graveyard, but if you do not control a copy of Eldlich, you actually have to special summon Eldlich, which you're always going to do anyways. But this card also has a really awesome ability that you can actually banish this card in the graveyard to set a golden land spell or trap directly from your deck to your side of the field, but you can only activate one of this effect per turn and only once that turn, meaning you cannot use both effects. We then play 2 copies of Huakero. Huakero is really good as a 2 of in the build that actually special summons itself as a trap monster, which is really cool. It is a level 5 with 1,800 attack and 1,500 defense that's a zombie light. It also has the ability, if you control a copy of Eldlich the Golden Lord, you can actually banish a card from either player's graveyard as well, which is a really cool ability. Also, during the end phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard to set an Elixir spell or trap directly from your deck to your side of the field, which is usually going to be your copy of Scarlet Sanguine, but just like your copy of Scarlet Sanguine, you can only activate either or of this effect per turn once per turn, that you can activate it, summon it as a monster and banish a card, or you can banish it from the graveyard to actually set an Elixir spell or trap. We then play 3 copies of Conquistador. Conquistador is great as a 3-of because this card is actually a pop, which is really cool, as it special summons this card as a normal monster that's a zombie, light, level 5, 500 attack, 1,800 defense, and it's still treated as a trap, just like your copy of Huakero. This card also has the ability, if you control a copy of Eldlich the Golden Lord, when you activate this card, you can destroy a face-up card on the field, which is a great ability. And also shares the effect, just like your copy of Huakero, that during the end phase, you can banish this card from the graveyard to set add an Eldlich or spell or trap directly from your deck to your side of the field, but you can only activate one of this card's effect per turn and only once that turn. We then play 3 copies of Torrential Tribute. Torrential Tribute is really good to be able to play because your copy of Eldlich, when it summons itself off its own effect, cannot be destroyed by card effects. And this card is really good at just board wiping your field. Plus, with all the fire decks running around right now, this card is really good to play a little bit of water in the meta. We then play 3 copies of Ice Dragon's Prison. Ice Dragon's Prison is so good. This card is so powerful in the meta. This card is really good because it lets you target a monster in your opponent's graveyard and special summon him to your field, but its effects are negated. Then you can banish a monster from both players' fields that have the same type as each other, which is such a cool ability, just to basically bring a boss monster that your opponent might have in the graveyard back to your side of the field, or deal with 2 monsters at the exact same time that your opponent needs for their combos. We then play 3 copies of Dogmatic Punishment. Dogmatic Punishment is definitely a 3-of in the build. We play a lot of really good targets for this card in the extract. This card is great because it does lock you out of the extract, but it lets you target a face-up monster your opponent controls, send a monster with equal or higher attack from your extract to the graveyard, and if you destroy that monster, but until the end of the next turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters from the extract, which is totally fine because we really don't need the extract all that much. We then play 3 copies of Karma Cannon. Karma Cannon is so good in this deck, especially with so many link monsters being summoned in today's meta. This card changes as many monsters on the field as possible to face down defense position. Then, if either player controls a face-up monster, they must send all face-up monsters they control to the graveyard. This card actually outs towers like monsters because it affects the player and not the monster, which is absolutely insane. Plus, this outs all link monsters because they cannot be flipped face down. We then play 3 copies of Solemn Strike. Solemn Strike is really good as a 3-of in the build because this card just says no to when your opponent summons a monster. As when a monster would be special summoned or a monster effect is activated, pay 1500 life points to negate the summoner activation if you destroy that card, which is really, really good. We then play 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. Solemn Judgment literally just says no to anything by paying half your life points, which is amazing, and definitely give us a like for this one, guys, because these are MRD Metal Raider original prints, which I absolutely love playing in this deck. It's so cool to be able to play the old school cards. This card says pay half your life points to negate basically anything in the game, which is absolutely amazing. Speaking of negating anything in the game, we still have Skill Drain as a floodgate, so we're playing it as a 3-of. This card is absolutely broken. You activate this card by paying 1000 life points to negate the effects of all face-up monsters that are face-up on the field, but their effects can still activate, but they are negated. This card is absolutely amazing as a 3-of in the build, just to stop your opponent's monster effects, and really hurts the opponent a lot more than it hurts us, because we can always summon our copy of Eldlich as a 3500 attack point monster. He resolves completely off the field. Your copy of Lord of the Heavenly Prison doesn't super matter, you're just using it to basically protect your background. And Fenrir special summons itself from your hand as a 2400 attack point monster, which is pretty cool just to instantly summon that card out to your side of the field and have a 2400 attack point monster to swing in for game. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get in to the extra deck. So for the extra deck, guys, we're going to start with a single copy of the Final Bringer of End of Times. This card is now one of my favorite XZ cards just for its artwork alone, but it's a walking again, it pops cards on the field, which is really, really amazing. Plus, it's super easy to summon the deck because it does just require level 10 monsters. Speaking of level 10 monsters, we also play Gustav Max in the deck. Gustav Max is really good because it does 2000 points of burn damage to the opponent, which can help you close out games extremely easily in this deck. We then play a single copy of Juggernaut Lieb. Juggernaut Lieb is great in the deck as a 1-of because it's just an OTK machine that you can put on top of your copy of Gustav Max to close out games, and it's really good to be able to play in the deck. We then play a single copy of Constellar Pleiades. We can use our trap monsters like Huakera and Conquistador to make this card, and this card is really good to be able to play because it's basically a bounce every turn, which is really insane. We then play a single copy of Zeus. Zeus is a really good board wipe in the deck, but since we are playing so many traps in the deck, you don't summon it all that often. It's just in case, kind of, which is why I play it, because if my opponent starts establishing a bunch of floodgates on the field, I set a bunch of back row, I can make this card to board wipe, which is why I play it as a 1-of in the build. Plus, again, you really don't need the extracts. This card is just a good option. We then play 3 copies of Elder Entity Nist. Elder Entity Nist is one of the best Dogmatica punishment targets because it basically turns punishment into a double pop, which is really cool to be able to use. We then play 2 copies of Garua. If this card does touch the graveyard, we do get to draw a card, which is really nice to be able to do. I then play 2 copies of the Tri-Brigade Arms. Tri-Brigade Arms is amazing in the build. This card is really good because you send this card to the graveyard first as a 3,500 attack point monster, then you pop the card on the field, then you send Garua to the graveyard behind it because of your Tri-Brigade Arms ability to basically draw a card, so you get a pop and a draw card off of Dogmatica punishment. We then play 2 copies of Link Spider. I don't feel like you need any more than 2 copies of this card. This is just to basically link away your Huakero or your Conquistador off the field to get their effects off in the graveyard, which is really, really good. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed. This deck is super fun to be able to play. If you guys have never played Eldlich before, you should definitely give this deck a try. It's one of my favorite decks to be able to play, especially since I play this deck on Master Duel all the time. If you guys have not checked out one of the Master Duel streams, you should definitely do so because it's a lot of fun and it's a really cool community event. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.